Have you told your friends that you see ghosts?
Oh, absolutely not.
Gina Rodriguez returns in Not Dead Yet.
I'm back, baby.
Who is that?
Oh, she's the obituary writer.
And Brad Garrett joins the brilliant ensemble cast.
Titan, Maverick, Titan of all Mavericks. These are all words used to describe me.
Not Dead Yet. Season premiere. Tonight, 8:30, 7:30 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.
It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
The first big week of school for so many kids around the country is coming to a close. Today is the last day of week one for a whole lot of states, week two for a bunch of other states. And if your kids are anything like ours, there is every chance that they're kind of ready for a day off. They'd like another long weekend. Please and thank you.
Well, I might be sharing too much, but we were 3 days in when one of our children may have just asked for a sickie. And since we only have one child at school...
No fingers being pointed at that kid at all. And she took the day off. She actually took the day off she only did 2 days and she needed a day off already. We dealt with it, and we're going to talk to you about how to deal with it when the kids just say, I don't want to go to school. Now, we're not talking about school refusal. Okay, school refusal, also known as school can't, also known as emotion-based or emotion-focused school avoidance, that's a topic for another day. Right now, it's just when your kids are like, I don't want to go to school. I'm just not feeling it. I'd really like to have a day off. Now, that can turn into school refusal or emotion-based school avoidance, but that's not where we're going today. I have a question for you before we dive into the meat of our conversation today. When you were in primary school or high school, were you one of those kids that were asking for days off?
We moved to Australia in my last 2 years of primary school. And from then on, I probably asked for a lot more days.
What did your parents say? I mean, we're going back to the 1980s, right? 1980s, Mum, can I have the day off? I don't feel like going to school. What was the typical response from a 1980s mum?
Yeah, just you've got to go to school. Like it's just expected.
Yeah, so I didn't ask for days off in primary school. I loved primary school. But something happened in high school to me, and it was probably the worst thing that could have happened to me educationally. Don't really know. Well, actually, I've got a whole lot of rewriting history things, but we don't need to go there. Suffice to say, I hated going to school, but I never bothered asking if I could have the day off because Mum and Dad were paying for a private school. It was very expensive, especially back in those days.
So you just wagged instead?
Well, once I got old enough to get away with wagging, I did. But until then, I just went to school and copped it because that's what I had to do. Anyway, we need to talk about what to do when your kids want a day off because being at school matters.
Over the years, I've attended lots and lots of information nights for parents.
Parent-teacher nights, yeah.
And the amount of times I've heard a teacher sprout off facts like for every 15 minutes your kid misses school every day, they're missing, 3 weeks of school work or, kind of, I can't remember all the details specifically, but the constant bombardment of a need to attend school and be there on time and don't miss a minute or else your kid's missing out.
And certainly don't miss a day.
So is there actually a correlation between our kids having a day off school every now and again or missing 15 minutes of the beginning of a class, or is there actually research that tells us whether or not our kids are going to be better off or worse off?
There is, but we're talking about on average, okay? So the word average really matters. That means that there are some kids who are unaffected, some kids who are massively affected, and there's a bunch of kids in the middle who are probably somewhat affected some of the time, depending on the circumstances.
You sound like a scientist.
I know. Well, that's what I do, right? So first off, let's be really clear.
Or maybe more aptly a politician.
Oh, no. No, I want to give you some really clear stuff, all right? I just don't buy. I mean, yes, if you calculate a kid being late to school every day by 15 minutes at the end of the year, maybe they have missed a cumulative total of 3 weeks of school. But honestly, missing roll call, it's not going to change their world. It's not going to rock their academic life. We might want to do something about punctuality in our home if that's happening, but I don't think that we're going to find the same relationship that missing lots of days or lots of classes is going to lead to. So Here's what the academic research shows. First off, on average, we see from an academic achievement standpoint, regular school attendance is unsurprisingly correlated with higher academic success. If you're not there, you can't do as well. Now, of course, there are some kids that do just fine because they're in really supportive homes and they've got lots of resources and they do take time off and they still manage to get through just fine. But there are plenty of kids that don't come from those kinds of homes, and when they take time off, it doesn't work out well for them. This is why schools don't want families taking big holidays in the middle of school term, because every day counts from that point of view. The reality is, quite often, many of the families that are doing that can probably help their kids to stay up to date or catch up when they get home, but it's a bad look. The other thing that goes on here is potentially it teaches the kids some stuff that's not really great for them. It's important for them to understand consistency. But I think the big thing is that it makes life much harder for teachers who have to continually repeat teaching content to students who have missed out.
That sounds a bit like parenting.
Yeah, so that's the really big challenge. But I mean, chronic absenteeism, prolonged periods of school absence is associated with, correlated to a negative impact on kids' educational attainment, leads to learning gaps, leads to decreased proficiency in core subjects, leads to lower chances of graduating from high school, which does affect life outcomes. Probably also worth highlighting really briefly, there is also a relationship between attending school and social and emotional outcomes. Now, I want to be really careful here because we're talking again on average. The reality is school is not awesome for every child from a social point of view and therefore from an emotional point of view. Some kids have really big challenges. But on average, what we do see is that regular interaction with peers at school and regular interaction with teachers in the classroom is great for social skills and for emotional intelligence, for a sense of belonging. And kids who miss school consistently often experience a whole lot of isolation and they struggle with forming relationships. And they can face challenges in developing essential life skills around being social. And let's face it, quite often school is a place of safety for a lot of kids. That's where they go so that they can get the social and emotional support that they're not getting out of school. We've got two of our kids homeschooling, and what we're starting to see is that this is a bit of a challenge. Our kids are well adjusted and they can do well socially, but they don't have the same level of frequent interactions with others. So while they're not struggling from a social skills point of view, there is a bit of a loneliness thing. It's different for them. And the last thing that I would say is that we know that completing education is often associated with better educational and employment prospects, higher earning potential, improved quality of life overall. So does missing a day matter? I mean, the education departments would say every day counts. I agree with them in principle on average, but I think that I think that it's probably overstating it. It's probably overemphasizing it. It doesn't pass the sniff test for every family and every child, and that's probably why people sort of, I guess, become a little bit cynical and skeptical when we try to blanket the entire population with one rule. I guess for our podcast, if we were to share a slice of advice on what to do when the kids are asking for a day off, I would say what's the best way forward? And all week we've been trying to get it down to one slice of advice. Today we're down to 3. Couldn't quite get one.
So 6, 4, 3. We're down to 3.
So your favourite one, and we've done this for years with our kids at your instigation. Took you a while to convince me that it was right, but I love it now. I think you should talk about your one first.
So one of the things that I instigated with our kids, because we were having a lot of sickie days.
Unexpected, random, annoying sickies.
Was scheduling a mental health day. So they knew that there was one day a term. It wasn't scheduled in. It was they could pull the mental health card day out at any point during term, but it was one day. And so whenever they would ask for a sickie, I would say to them, is this your mental health day? And they'd look at me and go,
I think
no,
I want it on another day. I'll go to school today. Yeah.
And so it really made them think about whether or not they felt that this was really needful or if this was just, I'm just having a lazy day. And it made such a difference because we went from having regular sickie days to an acknowledgement that there was one day that they could save up for any point, and that was actually almost, they didn't have to justify it.
No,
it was just
I need a day off.
Today's the day.
Today's my mental health day.
And I also made the time to be available for them on that day.
Yeah, which is a wonderful privilege if you can. Obviously, not everyone can do that. And if for some reason this is happening a lot, they're asking for more mental health days than you can really do, or if for whatever reason you just cannot facilitate that, you can't allow it, it just doesn't work for your lifestyle, your family, your commitments, your requirements, your responsibilities. This is when we move to what I think is the second slice of advice, and that is that we've just got to understand the root causes. So if your kid's pulling a sickie, getting to the bottom of what's going on is absolutely vital.
So if our kids are asking for the random day off, I think we can let it slide. You and I have bad days every now and again.
Yeah,
where
it's kind of human.
Don't feel like getting out of bed. We just want to read our book because it's really good and we're up to the great, exciting part.
I do have a little bit of reluctance around the kids having their mental health day to finish a book. But this is the thing. If it's the only day that they're having off this term and they're so committed to it, I guess that's the day. And we've let them have that facility. Something that I was just reminded of while you were talking, though, was a time when our third daughter, who's now finished high school, she was in about grade 2 or grade 3, and she didn't want to go to school one day. And I spent some time with her trying to understand the root causes, couldn't really get very far, but understood that she wouldn't go to school unless she had a new school bag. I had to jump in the car and go to the airport and fly to another city so that I could help other people make their families happier, which meant that on the way out, I said, Kylie, I just need you to talk with Ella and help to understand why does she need a new school bag before she'll go to school. You sat down with her. You really worked hard to understand those root causes. And ultimately, what she said to you after a long time of trying to understand was, I don't want to go to school until I have a new school bag because when people come to school with new things, they get noticed. And I want to be popular.
I don't have any friends. Was actually what it narrowed down to. She didn't feel like she had any friends.
And a new school bag would help her to get the attention that would make her feel like she had friends and that she was popular and that she was noticed and that she mattered and that she belonged. Once we understood that, we didn't buy her a new school bag, let's be clear, but we did have some important conversations with her about friends and about what we could do to support her. We spoke to the teacher. Like it really changed everything, that one conversation, because we got to the root cause. To me, that's really the very crux of what we're trying to do when the kids want a day off, especially if they're doing it more than once and it's not just a mental health day kind of thing.
So our third slice of advice actually beautifully expands on that notion of getting to the root cause. The way we do that is with your 3 E's.
Yeah.
We explore what's going on. What are the core issues that have your child not wanting to be at school? And then we explain.
Yeah, communicate a really clear rationale for what you're asking and why.
Why it's important. And then from there, we find ways to empower our kids. With Ella in that story, she didn't have a school bag, but we talked about the kids that she actually wanted to be friends with. We found names. I then went and spent time at school with the teachers and explained what was going on. This little 6-year-old, she'd been taking money from my wallet because, again, she thought if she had money, then she could buy things for her friends, and buying things would buy friends, basically. And so being able to include the school in the process of helping her navigate friendships and then work out which were the children that she actually got on really well with that we could then invite into our home and build relationships. And in that way, I was able to help and empower her to make better friendships that would then carry her through the school playground.
The other thing that Explore, Explain, Empower does is it helps you to identify if there is something deeper that could lead to school refusal, if it's becoming school refusal. This process helps you to discover that much, much faster because the kids feel seen, heard, and valued. They feel connected. Ultimately, a well-timed sickie now and then, I think, can be a pretty small price to pay for overall well-being. And if the kids want to have a day off every now and again, from both an academic and an emotional point of view, I don't think that we need to be militant about this if our lifestyle and our resources, if we have the capacity for it. Sending the kids to school when they're really struggling doesn't usually benefit them. Every now and again, it's fine. They get to school and they're okay. But once a term, I don't think it's a huge deal. I know that there's plenty of people in education that will be cranky at me for saying it, but I think as parents, we know our kids well enough. If you think it's going to be to their detriment, just send them along, but do it kindly, gently, compassionately, with understanding root causes and exploring, explaining, and empowering. If you think, you know what, they're good kids, they're working hard, they're keeping up, a day off now and then, it's okay. Just not too often, and hopefully not in week 1 or week 2.
I think the most important thing out of all of this is even if you choose to not keep your kids at home, they need to feel heard and seen and valued. Their opinion needs to matter. And so while it might not get them a day off school, they know that you've seen them, that you've heard them, and that you understand what they're feeling. But there's a rationale and there's an explanation as to why today's not the day they're going to be at home.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. For more information about making your family happier, please visit us at happyfamilies.com.au and have a great weekend.